The bright studio lights of the view beamed down on the stage as the cameras zoomed in on the panel. The audience buzzed with excitement. Today's episode was special. Denzel Washington, the two-time Academy Award winner, was sitting at the table. His calm but powerful presence filled the room before he even spoke. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, her notepad already filled with underlined points. She had been preparing for this moment since producers told her Denzel would join. Known for her sharp legal mind and unflinching opinions, Sunny was determined to challenge him, not just interview him. "Denzel, welcome," she began with a smile that felt a little too tight. "We're honored to have you here. But I want to jump right into something that's been making headlines. You've been criticized for comments about Hollywood, race, and responsibility. Some say your views are outdated. Care to explain yourself?" The audience let out a collective gasp. Who opens an interview like that? Denzel didn't flinch. His expression remained calm, his eyes steady. "Outdated," he repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. "Sunny, I've been in this business for over 4 decades. I've seen the ups, the downs, the lies, the truths. I don't deal in trends. I deal in principles." The audience applauded, but Sunny wasn't ready to back down. "Well," she pressed, "with all due respect, some would argue that by refusing to acknowledge systemic issues directly, you're ignoring the struggles people face daily. Don't you think as a public figure, you have an obligation to be more vocal?" The tension at the table rose. Whoopi Goldberg shifted in her seat, clearly sensing a storm brewing. Joy Behar raised her eyebrows, silently mouthing "oh boy." Denzel leaned forward now, his voice low but commanding. "Let me tell you something, Sunny. I'm not here to be anybody's puppet. I'm not here to parrot talking points. My obligation is to live truthfully, do my job with integrity, and take care of my family. That's it." The audience erupted in cheers. Sunny blinked, momentarily thrown off, but she regrouped quickly. "But Denzel, don't you think that mindset comes from a place of privilege? Most people don't have the luxury of just taking care of family when there are injustices to fight." Denzel chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Privilege. I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. My father was a preacher. My mother was a beautician. I wasn't privileged, I was disciplined. And that discipline is what got me here. Don't twist hard work into privilege." A murmur ran through the audience, some clapping, others whispering. Sunny crossed her arms. "So, you don't believe systemic racism exists?" The entire studio froze. It was the question everyone dreaded, the kind that could end careers, ignite Twitter wars, and dominate headlines for weeks. Denzel sat back, silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. "I believe evil exists. I believe ignorance exists. I believe injustice exists. But I also believe in personal responsibility. You can't legislate morality into people's hearts. You can only teach, live, and inspire. That's my message." The crowd roared. Even Whoopi leaned over with a grin, whispering into her microphone, "That's a word right there." But Sunny wasn't smiling. Her jaw tightened. "With all due respect, that sounds like a convenient way to avoid accountability. And frankly." Denzel suddenly raised his hand, cutting her off. His deep voice boomed across the studio, commanding instant silence. "Sunny, I've answered your questions. But I'm not going to sit here while you twist my words into something they're not. If this is what the show is about, then I'm done with this show." Gasps. The audience erupted in shock. Cameras zoomed in as producers waved. Frantically behind the scenes, Joy Behar's eyes widened like saucers. Sarah Haynes dropped her pen. Whoopi muttered, "Lord, here we go." Sunny blinked, stunned. She hadn't expected him to push back so hard, let alone threaten to walk off. Denzel stood up, straightening his jacket. "I came here in good faith, to share my perspective, to have a conversation. But what I won't do is let anyone put words in my mouth. That's not who I am." The crowd gave him a standing ovation. Sunny sat frozen, gripping her notepad. Her plan to corner him had backfired spectacularly. Instead of silencing him, she had handed him the stage, and he owned it. The episode wasn't even halfway done, and already, the internet would be on fire. The studio was chaos. Producers waved their arms like air traffic controllers, trying to calm the situation without cutting to commercial. The camera operators didn't know whether to follow Denzel as he stood tall at the table or stay fixed on Sunny's stunned face. The audience, however, knew exactly what to do. They were on their feet, clapping, cheering, and chanting, "Denzel! Denzel! Denzel!" Sunny shifted uncomfortably, forcing a smile. She wasn't used to being the one cornered. Normally, she was the sharp voice of accountability on The View, but now the energy of the room had turned against her. Whoopi leaned into her microphone. Hold up, everybody. Let's take a breath here," she said, raising her hands. "We don't need Denzel walking out the door before we even get to the next segment." The crowd quieted, though the tension still lingered like static in the air. Denzel glanced toward the audience, then back at the panel. His voice softened, but it carried just as much weight as before. "You see, this is what I'm talking about. We've lost the ability to have real conversations. Everything's turned into a gotcha moment. That's not dialogue, that's division." Sarah Haynes finally spoke up, her tone measured. "I think what Denzel's saying is that people need space to explain themselves without feeling attacked. And maybe that's something we can all learn from today." Denzel nodded slightly. "Exactly. We don't have to agree on everything. But respect has to stay in the room, or the room falls apart." The audience applauded again, this time calmer, more reflective. Sunny, however, wasn't ready to concede. "Respect goes both ways, Denzel," she said firmly. "And when someone like you, someone with your influence, chooses to sidestep critical issues, that also has consequences." Her words hung in the air. For a moment, the audience waited, almost holding their breath to see how Denzel would respond. He smiled, not mocking, not angry, but patient, like a teacher about to deliver a lesson. "Sunny, let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat down with a kid in a tough neighborhood and taught them how to read? When was the last time you walked into a prison and talked to young men about making better choices? I've been doing that for decades. I don't post it. I don't brag about it. But that's where the real work is. Not in front of cameras." The studio erupted, this time not just with cheers, but with shouts of, "Tell it, Denzel!" And, "Preach!" Sunny froze. She had no comeback. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her silence spoke louder than any rebuttal. Joy Behar chuckled, breaking the tension. "Well, I think we just found our sermon for Sunday." Even Whoopi laughed, shaking her head. "Listen, I may not agree with everything, but I'll tell you what, I respect the man for standing on what he believes." The producers, realizing they had struck viral gold, signaled for the cameras to keep rolling. Denzel sat back down, finally easing into his chair again. He clasped his hands together. "Look, I don't want to fight. I don't hate Sunny. I don't hate anybody at this table. But we've got to get out of this habit of shouting at each other and calling it progress. If you want change, you've got to do the work, not just talk about it on TV." The audience gave him another standing ovation. Sunny shifted in her seat, clearly flustered but trying to maintain composure. She offered a small, forced smile. "Fair enough," she said quietly, though her voice lacked its usual sharp edge. The show eventually moved on to other topics, but the energy never returned to normal. The moment had already stolen the spotlight. By the time the credits rolled, half the audience was still buzzing about Denzel's words. The fallout. Within an hour, clips of the exchange were all over social media. On Twitter, hashtags like #Denzel on The View, #Team Denzel, and #Sunny Hostin trended worldwide. One clip of Denzel declaring, "I'm done with this show," racked up 1 million views in under 30 minutes. On Instagram, fan accounts flooded timelines with quotes. "I don't deal in trends. I deal in principles. Don't twist hard work into privilege. Respect has to stay in the room." Meanwhile, Sunny Hostin faced a wave of criticism. Some viewers defended her, praising her for asking tough questions. But many others accused her of ambushing a guest and trying too hard to trap him. One viral comment read, "Sunny tried to take down Denzel, but he reminded her why he's a legend." Another said, "This wasn't The View, this was Denzel's masterclass." Backstage. As the audience filed out, the tension carried into the green room. Sunny sat with her arms crossed, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Denzel, on the other hand, was calm, sipping bottled water while chatting with Whoopi. "Man, you shook the building," Whoopi laughed. "I thought for sure you were walking off." Denzel smiled. "I was close. But I figured, why give people what they expect? Better to give them what they need. At that moment, Sunny finally spoke, her tone sharper than before. You embarrassed me out there. Denzel looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he simply said, no, Sunny. I challenged you. There's a difference. And with that, he walked out, leaving her in silence once again. The viral aftermath. The next morning, every news outlet was replaying the clip. Headlines blared across TV screens and online platforms. Denzel Washington stuns The View with explosive response to Sunny Hostin. Denzel drops mic on national TV. Viewers side with Denzel after heated exchange. Even late-night comedians picked it up, turning his, "I'm done with this show" line into punchlines and memes. But for many, it wasn't just entertainment, it was a reminder. A reminder that even in the middle of chaos, one voice grounded in principle can shift the entire room. And that day, on national television, Denzel Washington did exactly that.